Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at something really quite special. Forget the usual textbooks, the dry historical summaries. We've been given access to this collection of, well, fiercely personal inscriptions, chaotic legends, and some incredibly detailed historical excerpts.
And they were all left behind during one of the most terrifying periods of ancient collapse we have on record.
Absolutely. So we're looking at the foundational stories of the Marrakech, the Izimite, and the eternal cultures.
Exactly. Documents that chronicle how these great civilizations, these pillars of their world, just fractured under catastrophic pressure.
Yeah.
For us, these aren't just myths.
Yeah.
We have to treat them as critical forensic evidence.
Right. And our sources detail the fates of three just intensely powerful individuals. We've got Sakima Deshret, who you could call the ultimate warrior. Then there's King Rigwald, the desperate patriot. And finally, Lord Kadiro, the ultimate pragmatist.
Three completely different approaches to the same problem.
Exactly. And our mission today is simple, but deep. It's a forensic examination of their pivotal, life-altering decisions.
We really want to try and uncover the true internal motivations, the why behind the choices they made, and, expose the hidden catastrophic cost of their survival strategies.
And for you, the listener, this isn't just a history lesson. It's a chilling look into the mathematics of duty, of power, and, of course, unintended consequences.
The uniting thread here, across all three of these chronicles, is that they all faced an existential threat.
A world-ending threat.
A world-ending threat, yeah. Whether it was the Beast or the Purity Rebellion or the Cataclysm, each figure chose a path of radical preservation, but they all ended up trading one terror for an eternal curse.
They won the battle for survival, you could say.
They did, but in doing so, they forfeited their future or their self or even just their peace.
So in every case, the attempt to preserve something essential, their people, their power, their fortune, it didn't result in safety.
No, not at all. It resulted in a new self-imposed servitude, and that's the ultimate cost of clinging to power when you're facing oblivion.
Let's start with the idealist, the one whose solution was containment. The woman who traded the imminent destruction of her world for an inescapable, eternal curse. Sakima Deshret. Okay, let's unpack this. Let's really analyze the weight of duty.
To really appreciate the depth of Deshret's fall, I think we have to first understand her towering status. She wasn't just a military commander. That's too simple.
No, she was more.
So much more. She was the spiritual and structural foundation of the Marrakech. The sources consistently refer to her as the Red Sakima.
And that wasn't just a title, right? It had real meaning.
It denoted her role as the very architect of their identity. She literally forged the Marrakech into a united, strong people.
We have Tasuni's account, which is just incredibly expressive. It says that Deshret lit fires in the hearts of women and loins of men.
Now think about that phrasing.
It's a foundational level of influence. She didn't just lead them into battle. She inspired them to reproduce, to build, to be a nation. She was life itself to them.
And this links her personal identity, her very being, inextricably to the nation's success. Which is why, as Tasuni observes, her fall directly precipitated their decline. He says, "We've been falling ever since."
Oh.
Her mission, therefore, became an existential act for everyone. The collapse of Deshret was the collapse of the Marrakech spirit.
So the scale of the threat, this beast, it was matched by the intensity of her response. She rides toward the mountain, toward this nightmare.
And she doesn't go alone. She has her elite force, the Kiato Akara. And we need to be clear, these weren't just soldiers.
No, they were more than that.
They were her devoted, strong inner circle, her chosen instruments of absolute protection, her spiritual children, in a way.
And her internal drive, according to the text, was singular. She wanted to so shut the mouth of nightmare so that it would not consume her world.
That's right. The initial goal was absolute victory. It was the ultimate sacrifice to ensure the total survival of her people. There was, no room for compromise in her mind as she started that journey.
It was a clear path. Kill the beast, save the Marrakech. Simple.
Or so she thought.
But the journey itself, it must have been, it reveals the terrible psychological pressure she was under. She was carrying the emotional and, literal weight of an entire civilization on her shoulders.
Marching towards something so terrifying it defied physical description. She was the one pillar they could not afford to break.
And yet, she broke.
She broke. The chronicle just shifts violently from heroism to tragedy at this one specific moment. She reaches the very threshold of the darkness, the sources say, and Deshret falters.
That sudden break in her seemingly indomitable courage. That's the pivot, isn't it? The point upon which all of Merekith history turns.
It is. And this is where we have to engage with the source's speculation about her interiority, her inner thoughts. Oyun, who is this sort of wise observer figure in the texts, offers us two primary possibilities for why she stopped.
Okay, so what are they?
The first is, was it calculated pragmatism? Did she pause because she knew King Kaum, the Ezemite king, went into that darkness before her and never returned?
So a fear of futile sacrifice, a tactical retreat based on precedent. She didn't want to just throw her life away for nothing.
Exactly. Or as you mentioned before, was it the overwhelming psychological burden? Did the sheer power of the nightmare, the scale of the catastrophe she was staring in the face, did it simply consume her indomitable spirit?
And the difference matters. It matters immensely. Was it caution or was it cowardice? I have to push back on the idea of simple cowardice, though. If she truly was the architect of their identity, this force of pure, unwavering focus, wouldn't an absolute warrior prefer oblivion to returning with a poison solution?
You'd think so.
If she realized the cost of victory was her own oblivion, wouldn't she choose that death to ensure her people were free over this perpetual, compromised existence? Why did she choose the compromise?
That is the essential question, isn't it? And the evidence we have suggests it was a calculated retreat, but one she disguised as a moral solution. Her specific action wasn't flight. It was sealing.
She chose containment.
Containment. She chose not to slay the beast. She closed and sealed the mines and appointed the Kiato Akara, her most trusted, her most devoted warriors, as Highgate's permanent eternal guardians.
The power dynamics of that decision, they crystallize immediately. She maintained power over the beast's physical reach. She effectively limited the catastrophe to a geographical area.
But in doing so, she forfeited the moral authority of an absolute victory.
Right.
And Oyun delivers this just chilling judgment. She simply traded one curse for another.
A deal with the devil, essentially.
In a way, yes. And the very act of sealing, instead of slaying, it created immediate doubt and ambiguity among the survivors. The sources tell us that the plagues and tempests that were ravaging the land, they subsided, but the question was never answered.
Did they pass of their own accord or because of Deshret's seal?
Exactly. That uncertainty eroded her legitimacy instantly. Her actions weren't viewed as pure salvation anymore. They were seen as a desperate, messy gamble. The price of failing to commit to the ultimate sacrifice was the forfeiture of universal belief in her ultimate authority.
And the cost of that contained strategy becomes just horrifyingly clear when we look at the immediate human consequences.
Oh, it's brutal.
This is where Deshret's tactical choice, this pragmatic decision, it transforms into a moral atrocity.
It does. Because the sealing was enacted before everyone could be evacuated. And the sources, they grant us something they call a deep dig memory. It's an inscription, and it details the true psychological and physical suffering of those who were left inside.
We really need to sit with this detail because it's brutal.
It is. It's not just death. It's the absolute loss of reality. The voice of the trapped reveals this inescapable confinement. They suffer from the inability to sleep, so it's a perpetual waking nightmare.
And they feel no thirst, even though they are intensely parched. That's a terrifying disconnection between body and mind.
The environment itself becomes the torturer. The foreman's account is one of sensory distortion, creeping insanity. He describes the walls, the earth, even his own familiar working tools. He says they became sticky as honey.
Imagine that feeling. Viscous, inescapable. The physical world itself is rejecting its own solidity around you.
As the chronicler Xana observes, this was a terrible fate. A confinement where the survivors were left anticipating something far worse than simple death.
So Deshret's pragmatic choice to contain the beast immediately led to the slow, agonizing demise and psychological breakdown of her own people. Her duty demanded the lives of the few to save the many, but the way those few perished through madness and despair, it just poisons the entire act.
But then we get the perspective that challenges this moral condemnation.
Kira, right.
Yes, Kira, another important chronicler. Kira defends the Sekima, urging us to look beyond the immediate horror of it all.
And what's Kira's argument?
Kira argues that the seal was placed not only to contain the beast's physical power, but critically to hinder those fools who would disturb its slumber.
So it adds this immense strategic depth to her faltering.
Exactly. Deshret might have known the beast couldn't be killed, that it could only be put to sleep, and she might have foreseen that future generations, driven by greed or curiosity, would inevitably try to wake it.
So it wasn't just containment of a monster. It was a chilling, long-term preventative measure against human folly.
She sacrificed the few living below to inoculate the many future generations living above from their own intrinsic weakness. The moral line she crossed was calculated to protect the future from itself.
And that strategic containment, that decision, it became the bedrock of the entire Merakith legacy.
Their whole current existence is defined by this single ascetic choice. They are bound by ascetic tradition, tasked with this unending, generations-long duty of guarding that sealed entrance.
And she didn't just leave them a duty, she engineered their ongoing survival. Deshret is credited with crafting the powerful Merakith weaponry.
A new breed of arms designed specifically to aid in this eternal vigil. Their identity is no longer defined by conquest or expansion, what it was under her. Now it's about austere maintenance and endless, unyielding defense of a single poisoned location.
But despite her strength, her willingness to make that ultimate moral compromise, her own physical fate was sealed.
Yes. She was ultimately defeated by Vol, the brittle emperor who took her banner. And this was symbolic public destruction of the very identity she had worked so fiercely to forge. A complete humiliation.
But for Deshret, death was not a release. It was just the beginning of the next phase of her suffering.
Not at all. Desuni confirms that the red Sakuma spirit is now within the mines, the very place she sealed. This is her post-mortem agony.
And she's subjected to the wicked way of Malachai's apprentices. We're talking about Chavron, Dudra, and Malegro, the true artists of corruption.
And these figures, they're not just brute tormentors. They attempt to subsume Deshret into the collective corruption. Their goal is to break her mind, warp her identity, and make her one of them, aghast.
To use her spirit to serve the very darkness she originally tried to contain.
Which would be the ultimate perverse victory for the beast.
But they failed. And the reason they failed provides a spectacular insight into her character. It's a profound piece of woven interiority that just flips the idea of artistic weakness on its head.
The sources state that the apprentices, they rely on warping perception, a twisting desire, weaponizing dread, all faculties of the imagination. Deshret never had such a faculty as an imagination. Her strength was her absolute, grounded, practical focus on the tangible reality of duty and action.
So the very thing that made her cross that moral line, her inability to envision a compromise-free solution, her relentless pragmatism, it became her shield in the afterlife.
It's an incredible irony. She's too literal, too focused on the immediate task to be corrupted by psychological artistry.
So she remains a spirit chained, yet not enslaved. Tortured, yet unbroken.
She is paying the eternal price for that sealed-in moral atrocity. She's experiencing the darkness she created. But the purity of her unwavering practical will prevents her from being fully possessed.
She is trapped in the consequence of her duty, but her sense of self remains intact.
It's a staggering realization. She's eternally denied peace because she is structurally incapable of the psychological surrender that would grant her that respite.
And even in this state of perpetual agony, her final, just heart-wrenching longing reverberates.
We hear her voice reverberating up from the depths, and the Red Sekhma's one simple, profound desire is to return to the dust of her Vastiri.
After trading everything, her moral legitimacy, the lives of her people, her peace all for duty, her only wish is for physical rest and the land she sacrificed so much to protect.
Her legacy is a cursed nation bound to perpetual maintenance, and her afterlife is a denial of rest, forcing her to guard the very darkness she feared. That is the spectacular failure of idealism.
And that notion, that idea of being caged by duty, it leads us directly to our next chronicle. Sakuma Deshret chose a cage of duty and containment. King Rigwald, in contrast, chose a cage of pure feral instinct. So we move now from the idealist to the patriot, from Sakuma, who tried to contain a physical threat, to the king who realized he had to become the very thing he fought.
Right, Rigwald, the Wolven King. He faced a different kind of apocalypse, yet his choice was just as radical, just as transformative. His story shows us the price of gaining power, when duty demands that power transcends humanity and becomes primal.
So let's set the scene for Rigwald. What was happening to his world?
Rigwald's world was ending. Not with a single physical entity like the beast, but with a horrifying, rapid societal breakdown caused by plague and civil war.
The Izamite civilization was collapsing.
It was. And we have this really tragic record of their cultural decline framed through color. It's very visceral.
I remember this. Their culture started with the red of life in the fray. vibrant, aggressive.
And then it quickly shifted to the black of disease and dismay as the plague took hold. And finally, it settled into the cold gray of twilight and decay.
Which signaled the end of their identity.
This context is vital. Rigwald, the Thane and Wolven King, he didn't make his choice in a moment of strength. He made it in the ashes of his world. Only the Isles of Scoth remained, which were once a backwater, and now they're the entire fragile remnant of a once proud civilization.
And he was caught in the middle of the Purity Rebellion, fighting Chitus and his abominations. We need to clarify for you, the listener, these were not normal enemies.
Not even close.
Chitus's forces included gemling aberrations. Humans mutated and empowered by thaumaturgy, infused with power gems, effectively turning them into magical, unnatural monsters.
Rigwald saw his best human soldiers, his proud Izamite warriors, just struck down by these creatures of grotesque power. And this led him to a devastating, inescapable realization that this was no longer a war of mud and blood.
Conventional warfare was dead. It was a new magical conflict, and it demanded a radical response.
And here we get to the core of his motivation, stated with just chilling clarity in the texts. To defeat the monsters, Rigwald concluded, they needed monsters of our own.
He realized conventional kingship, which relies on social structure and military organization, was obsolete. It was useless. To survive, he had to embrace the wildness that predated civilization.
So what does he do?
His response was immediate and ritualistic. He performs this desperate sacrificial rite among the stones, calling out to the first ones.
The primeval, pre-civilization gods.
Exactly. And his specific appeal was to the Great Wolf. He didn't just pray, he acted. He offered gifts of blood and song, of flesh and fire. This is a transaction, a high-stakes negotiation with a primal entity. It shows his willingness to use his own existence as currency. The woven interiority we get from Inscription the Fourth is just striking. Rigwald frames his choice purely through the lens of duty. He's justifying this extreme transaction to himself.
He says, it is no more than a man should do for his family. It is no more than a king should do for his people. He elevates the sacrifice to a necessary professional duty of kingship.
He isn't walking into this blindly either, is he? There is this tremendous unspoken tension in the writing.
Not at all. He acknowledges he is ready to pay the price that I know he will ask. He is willing to sign a blank check, his soul, his mind, his humanity, with a known, terrifying, primal entity, all for the sake of defeating Chitus's monsters.
And the transaction.
Yeah.
It was swift and absolute.
Instantaneous. The Great Wolf answered, offered the strength of the wild, untamed, raw, untainted by human politics, and the king paid in blood. This was not a subtle, gradual, spiritual deal. It was an immediate physical consequence for his human existence.
And the immediate consequence of that bargain is a transformation so complete it's terrifying. The text confirms Rigwald is now visibly monstrous and strange.
When he speaks to his men, he tells them not to look upon him with fear, but with wonder. He's trying to reframe his own monstrosity as the ultimate, ancient form of Izamite power.
But the inscription is brutally clear. This isn't wonder, it's replacement.
It's a complete replacement. The Great Wolf's essence has entirely subsumed him. It's a literal, physical takeover. The wolf's heart now beats in his chest, its tongue lolls in his mouth, its fangs crown his jaw, and its eyes rest within his sockets.
That's transfer of vital organs. It makes the wolf the functional driver of the man's body.
That visceral detail, the organ transfer, it really brings home the horror of it. The king is gone. The new entity is just wearing his skin.
And this replacement dictates a terrifying total psychological shift.
His previous complex political and social hierarchies, Izamite and eternal, king and commoner, master and slave, they're completely irrelevant to his new primal sight.
There's only one lens through which he views the world now.
A single lens, based purely on instinctual categorization. I see only prey.
Chilling. This is the moment of complete self-abdication. The king of men is dead. He explicitly refuses his former identity. No longer will I walk among my people. I will not have their blood on my lips. I will not be their king.
The man who made the bargain is entirely overwritten by the consequence of that bargain. He declares, I am the king of wolves now.
So the subtle, complex, duty-driven logic of the human king is just gone.
It's been replaced by the immediate, efficient, and feral logic of the Great Wolf. He has become the monster he needed to defeat other monsters.
And the new entity, it justifies its existence through this kind of philosophical promotion, right?
It does. The Great Wolf forced him to forget who he was, but in return, it taught him to be so much more. He rationalizes the loss of his humanity as a necessary step up in cosmic duty.
He argues that a man becomes a king to protect the people of the day.
But a man becomes a god, or a primal force, to protect the people of all the days to come. The sacrifice of his self is now framed as an eternal higher calling.
And the immediate consequence of this promotion is the beginning of the endless hunt.
His new purpose is focused on retrieving the talismans, these fetishes made of tooth and bone, skin and claw, that are infused with the power and fervor of the first ones.
His people's most sacred artifacts containing immense ancient power.
And he claims he hunts the thieves of this heritage to prevent others from growing fecund on power not their own. On the surface, it looks like a defensive mandate, guarding the ancient heritage of the Islamites against misuse, a necessary kingly duty.
But the unspoken tension underlying that mandate reveals a much darker primal need. It's driven by the entity inside him.
Yes, the great wolf's essence demands continuous feeding. Rigwald, the king of wolves, declares, "Power I must wield in the name of all that is Ethamar to come."
So his eternal hunt isn't just selfless guardianship.
Not at all. It is a primal struggle for dominance, fueled by the very power that consumed him. The transformation didn't grant him freedom, it merely replaced the political servitude of kingship with the instinctual servitude of the predator.
The price of saving his people was his unending feral existence, forever casing power to justify the loss of his soul.
A truly terrible fate.
So we've analyzed the idealist who chose spiritual torture and the patriot who chose transformation and loss of self. We now turn to a third type of survival, the individual who chose neither duty nor blood, but pure transactional greed.
Kadiro. His story is arguably the most cynical of the three. It's a deep dive into the immortality of greed, chronicling how meticulous economic foresight, applied even to the divine, resulted in the ultimate humiliation, perpetual debt servitude.
Let's start with the context. The Paranis family name was already infamous in the empire, wasn't it?
Oh yes, they were synonymous with massive exploitative wealth, known specifically for quick lending and equally quick, crushing interest charges. Their influence was vast, but ultimately cut short by the Purity Rebellion and Shadis's death.
Kadiro, however, was the exception. Unlike his relatives, who are likely caught up in the political drama, Kadiro demonstrated the shrewd, almost chilling financial foresight.
He didn't focus on military maneuvers or political alliances. He focused entirely on asset liquidity and relocation.
And the sources reveal the meticulous nature of his great heist. He knew the revolt was coming, but he didn't panic. Instead, before Vol's crusaders even arrived, the capital experienced a steady stream of unremarkable carts and wagons flowing out over a sustained period.
Let's just pause on the logistics of that for a moment. To steal the entirety of the kingdom's treasury, an operation of that scale requires not just force, but incredible cunning and administrative stealth.
He moved the wealth under the guise of banal, everyday commerce.
Exactly. No fanfare, no high-profile targets, just the constant grinding movement of unremarkable goods.
In this detail, it speaks volumes about Kadiro's psychology. He understood that in a crisis, people look for grand gestures. They look for the big, obvious thing.
And he focused on the mundane, hiding this massive, methodical divestment in plain sight. His loyalty was never to the empire or even his family's honor. It was purely, ruthlessly to his own balance sheet.
But securing the treasury only solved the liquidity problem. Kadiro still required personal insurance against the very real danger of being slit and emptied during the violent Purity Crusade to Highgate.
Right. And this required him to extend his financial pragmatism into a realm typically reserved for piety, the divine.
He realized that merely paying tithe and lip service to the household god Prospero, as his less astute relatives did, was a low-value, low-return spiritual investment.
So Kadiro, being Kadiro, chose to dig a little deeper. He found that Prospero the entity was real and, crucially, shared his purely pragmatic, cynical view on the Eternal Empire's impending collapse.
So this becomes the ultimate business transaction in the entire chronicle.
It really is. Kadiro wasn't seeking salvation or spiritual guidance. He was seeking an eternal underwriter for his life and his assets. The contract they signed proved to be, in his words, the best deal I ever made.
An agreement that lasted for over 2 centuries, sustaining Kadiro and granting him effective, living immortality.
And his rigor even extended to other deities. He actively shopped around for the best terms. He confirms that he considered making a deal with Chaos, the ultimate power, but he explicitly rejected it.
Why?
Because the price was too high.
Of course.
He chose Prospero because, in his cold, calculating assessment, Prospero was simply a much better master. This is just It's astounding. Kadiro approaches the divine not with worship, but with a ledger.
He only chooses the god that offers the most favorable, sustainable terms. He achieved literal immortality through a business contract. He secured the ultimate protection.
But protection is not freedom.
No. Immortality came, but the price was transformation into a perpetual state of servitude. Kadiro is no longer the influential, opulent lord.
He is reduced to a humble peddler, eternally bound to a specific task, constantly searching for his lost caches.
He achieved physical permanence, but is now debt-bound to his underwriter. The immediate consequence is that he is dancing to someone else's tune.
Prospero's tune. Who expects a generous and continuous good return on his investment for sustaining Kadiro's eternal life?
And that return has to be paid in a specific, highly unusual currency, which explains Kadiro's entire existence now.
Yes. He needs the golden variety Parandus coins, an obsolete currency from the collapsed empire, to satiate his backers' expectation.
This is a crucial detail. The gold isn't valuable for modern commerce.
No, it's valuable to Prospero, perhaps because it represents the historical power Prospero once held, or maybe it's magically infused with the weight of the old empire's debt. We don't know for sure.
But what we do know is that Kadiro's perpetual state is one of searching, dealing, and trading powerful artifacts just to recover defunct money, solely to fuel the demand of his immortal creditor.
His greatest financial triumph has resulted in eternal debt collection.
And the Parandus family's famous cruelty, their obsession with debt and interest, is now divinely enforced. In a normal world, death offers an escape from financial obligation.
But not here. Prospero intervened after the cataclysm. This is the theological horror of the story. Prospero bound the slain Parandus debtors into eternal servitude.
Death did not forgive their debts. It merely locked them into the terms of their contracts forever.
They are forced to guard Kadiro's stolen caches, waiting tirelessly for their master's return. Their existence is defined not by life or death, but by the debt they could never escape. It's the ultimate extension of the Parandus transactional worldview.
Even eternal rest is conditional upon payment.
And when Kadiro encounters you, the listener, he adopts the air of a sophisticated connoisseur. He's offering antiquities of remarkable potency, paraphernalia of pernicious craftsmanship.
But even this exchange is dictated by his servitude. He presents the retrieved obsolete currency not as payment for the relic, but as a necessary conveyance to his person, a mechanism required by his contract.
Right. He even shudders to think what those powerful relics he's trading could do in the hands of the wrong person. Yet he sells them anyway, because he has to.
This is the ultimate unspoken tension of his existence. He's selling immensely potent relics for archaic gold, ensuring Prospero's continued power and demanding his own continued servitude.
He is trapped in an immortal, agonizing business model, forever using his wealth to feed his own enslavement and ensure the eternal torture of his debtors. He bought immortality, but paid for it with his eternal freedom.
And that brings us to the chilling conclusion of these three forensically detailed chronicles. Three powerful individuals confronting existential threats. Each chose radical preservation, and each earned an inescapable curse.
Saima Deshret, the idealist of duty, chose containment. She's now spiritually tortured within the darkness she tried to seal, saved from total corruption only by her rigid, unwavering practicality.
A shield that also denies her the peace she so desperately desires.
Then there's Rigwald, the patriot of power. He chose radical biological transformation. He paid for the strength of the wild with his entire human self.
Becoming the eternal king of wolves, whose life is an endless, instinctual hunt for power, fueled by the predatory impulse that consumed him.
And finally, Lord Kadiro, the ruthless pragmatist of greed. He chose transactional immortality. He earned eternal economic servitude, forever debt-bound to a god who demands obsolete gold and forces his long-dead debtors to endure eternal guardianship.
So the synthesized principle across all three is clear. In this fallen world, preservation does not equate to safety.
Not at all. Every attempt to secure the future, whether it was through duty, through blood, or through wealth, it resulted not in liberation, but in a new, self-imposed price. The true catastrophe isn't death.
No.
It's a life spent endlessly paying for the decision you made just to survive.
It forces us to reconsider the ultimate cost of existence, really. Deshret is chained to a physical location and a single-minded sense of duty.
Rigwald is chained to a primal feral instinct.
And Kadiro is chained to a monetary contract, an eternally fluctuating balance sheet.
So if the ultimate currency is freedom of will, the ability to choose one's own course, Which of these three powerful figures suffered the most complete and enduring loss?
That's the question that remains. And that's what you need to chew on long after this deep dive ends.